It's a continuation off of what we did last year with circles. No, you've gone completing the square before. No, it's like the kind that you did with parabolas, same concept. Okay, so the standard form of a circle. Do you remember that from last year? X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals radius squared. So what we want to do is write it in general form. We're going to make it equal to 0. So you have to actually distribute this, which would be okay. How would you distribute this one? And then it would equal 9, right? And then all you have to do is set it equal to 0 and combine any like terms. So x squared plus y squared minus 4x minus 8y. 4 plus 16 is, but then we're going to subtract 9. So plus 11 equals 0. That is called general form. So general form equals 0. Standard form is the other one. Why is standard form useful, or how is it useful? To actually graph it. Looking at the general form, does that help you at all to graph it? But if you have the standard form, is it really quick and easy to graph the circle? You go to the center, draw the radius. Does that make sense? So what they're going to do is give you a problem that is in general form, and you want to complete the square to change it into standard form so that it's easier to graph. Okay? Do you already have that written down, the equation? No? Okay. So what you want to start by doing, put your x's in one set of parentheses, your y's in another set of parentheses, and set it equal to the number that they give you. It was 21, so when you move it to the right, it's now negative 21. Does that make sense? So now we're going to complete the square for the x part. What number would go here? Half of negative 6, and then square that. So if I add 9 over here, what do I need to do to the other side of the equation? The other side of the equation. Add 9. Okay? So we're not doing it to the same side of the equation like we did on parabolas. Does that make sense? For this one, what number would go here? Half of 8 is 4. Square that, get 16, right? So if I add 16 here, what do I need to do over here? Does that make sense? Any questions so far? How will this factor, like x minus 3 squared? Does that make sense? And then plus what? Y plus 4 squared. You see how that works? And then what does it equal? It was negative 21 plus 25 gives you a 4. Does that make sense? Y'all see how that works? Any questions on how to make it into standard form? Okay, so now graph it. How do you graph a circle? The radius is what? And what is the center? 3, -4. Does that make sense? Any questions on that part? Okay. So you go over. Three, down, 4. And then that's what my circle looks like. Do you see how that works? Y'all remember dealing with circles last year? Any questions on that part? Not really. Okay. Here's another one. What type of equation did they give us? The general. Given the general form, complete the square, write the standard form, and graph it. Does that make sense? Any questions there? Okay. What number is going to go with the x's? Do you agree with 4? So what do I do? Put 4 on the other side. What number goes here? And I add 9 over here. Does that make sense? Yeah, you like put them on the same side of the equation, so you add and you subtract 1. But since we're putting them one on one side and one on the other, you do the exact same thing. On the parabolas, we always had it y equals, and then we completed the square here, and then we added it over here. So it was on the same side. Is why you had to do one positive and one negative. So what would the standard form of this equation be? Okay, what is the center? And what is your radius? Does that make sense? Okay, so we're going to go to -2, 3. Square root of 7. Is that more than 1? Is that more than 2? Is it more than 3? So it's in between 2 and 3, right? It's 2 point something. So 1, 2, and a little bit more. 1, 2, a little bit more. 1, 2, a little bit more. 1, 2, a little bit more. Does that make sense? You see how exactly perfect, ooh, my circle is? Yours should look very great, just like mine. Does that make sense? You just estimate them on those. I do want to see these little points. Your circle should not look like this. If you have the center and then it's like not even close, that's not going to work. As long as it's going through these 4 points that you've plotted, you're good. Does that make sense? So even if it doesn't look circular, if you've got your points right, you're fine. Any questions there? Okay. What's different about this one? There are coefficients. We aren't going to take the 2 out. We are going to divide it out of everything. Because when you complete the square, you want that x squared to just be x squared, not a number, no coefficient. So we're going to divide everything by 2 before we even start. You may, as you're working through these, find another way that you like better, but I think this is the easiest way for me. But if you find another way and you get the same result at the end, that's fine. So then you complete the square. Does that make sense? Half of 1/2 is what? And you square that? So what are we at over here? Okay. What about the number that goes here? Does that make sense? Any questions there? Okay, so how does this actually factor? How does the next one factor? Yeah? And then it equals 1/16 plus 1/16 is what? 1/8. So we've got 1/8, and I can make that 12/8, which is, does that make sense? Okay, so does it say to graph this? What does it say to do? Describe it. So where is the center? Does that make sense? And what is the radius? Does that make sense? Square root of 13/8. So square root of 13 over square root of 8. So the square root of 8, will that reduce to what? Yes, 2 squared to 2. But do we leave it like this? Multiply by square root of 2. So you get square root of 26 over 4. That's what you want to write for your radius. Does that make sense? Is there any other information that you can give about a circle besides its center and its radius? So if it says describe, tell what its center is, tell what its radius is. I would probably write this equation just to be on the safe side. Any questions there? Any questions about circles? Okay.